Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome to the show. Jeff Waldorf here, around the nation, right here, TYT Nation. Got a good show for you guys here today on this Monday. We're going to do something a little bit different. We'll be talking about a lot of different things. I do have to, of course, do the breaking news, Andrew McCabe, and I'm going to give my thoughts about that. But then I want to talk about the Grammys. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't care about the Grammys. I don't give a shit. So no, we're not going to be talking about the Grammys. Almost had you guys. Almost had you guys. Anyway, I know. And look, some of you probably do care about the Grammys. God bless, right? But anyway, I do want to talk about the upcoming State of the Union speech and who the Democrats are actually going to pick. Fascinating. You'll see my thoughts on that. Then we also have a group of Senate Democrats helping Wall Street. Wonderful. Helping the Wall Street and the Republicans deregulate industry. I've got the information on that. We also have coal miners. What's been happening with them? Because look, I care about regular working people. I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump. If you're a regular working person and you're not like a racist or a terrible person, and you just want to see your economic situation improve, well, then I'm on your side. And I think you made a stupid mistake voting for Donald Trump. Doesn't mean I don't care about your economic well-being. I know. But anyway, I know some of you might disagree and like, no, anybody who voted for Trump, no matter the reasons, and reasons are actually very important, is a terrible person. Okay, anyway. Then we've got Koch brothers spending money on midterms. I'm going to talk about that. And, of course, an incredibly scary story of how Congress is handing Donald Trump his own private army. I know, man. Ugh. Here we go. Here we go. So, that is a disaster. Anyway, so, now, before we get into the show, I want to please let you guys know if you could, or ask you if you could give us a like and share. We're, of course, streaming on platforms, Facebook, and obviously on YouTube as well. So if you could give us a like and a share here, sharing is caring, get out the message, and all that stuff. So, okay. Anyway, that said, we'll start out with the obligatory news. Right. Okay. So the purge of the FBI has begun. And what's being reported today is breaking news. Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe has now stepped down. So, look, I'm reading for the New York Times here. He was widely expected as he had been repeatedly come under fire from Republicans in Congress and from President Trump. So everybody was like, Andrew McCabe, he's going to go. It's only a matter of time. He's gone. He's gone, right? So now they said McCabe made his intentions known to colleagues on Monday, and he will immediately go on leave and plans to retire when he becomes eligible in mid-March. So like he's not wasting any time. He's gone. Like gone. Like, yeah, I'm gonna take my preemptive leave. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. That's very interesting. It's sort of interesting when it comes to the timing, and it's sort of interesting in the fact that he is just immediately gone. Like, they want him out. And who do I mean by they? I think you know already, the Trump administration. And of course, I'm going to go into speculation here. And I'm just giving you warning, right? So this is my speculation and not necessarily what might have happened, what I think might have happened. Okay. So, look, Andrew McCabe, of course, they, in the White House, they're not happy with him, right? So what I've been seeing is that he has not been sufficiently loyal to President Trump. And so getting rid of McCabe, I think, is a way for them to get to Rod Rosenstein. Now, why in the hell would they want to get to Rod Rosenstein? Well, it's pretty simple. Rod Rosenstein appointed Robert Mueller. I think this is all, and again, this is my speculation. I think this is all an attempt to replace the heads of the FBI so that they could fire Robert Mueller. So that Trump specifically could fire Robert Mueller. Look, I did a story a couple of days ago, and I know a lot of you disagree with this, right? But there were reports that Donald Trump had tried to fire Robert Mueller. Now, why would you try to fire somebody that's investigating you? I'll leave you to sort out that your own answer on that one. But from what I see is that, yes, I think this is a way to pressure these people that are in line at the FBI to leave so that they can appoint their own people to the FBI, people that are sufficiently loyal to Trump and the administration. This is how strongmen work, right? They get rid of people that they don't like, that don't show a deference to them. Oh, look, they asked, oh, hey, Andrew, Mr. McCabe, who'd you vote for in the last election? Like that fucking matters. As long as you're doing a completely impartial investigation. And look, they say, but he wasn't impartial. His wife had taken money, not from Hillary Clinton, right? So that's the thing, right? Oh, they take Clinton money, right? Actually, his wife, Joe McCabe, ran for Senate in Virginia as a Democrat and accepted nearly $500,000 in contributions from Terry McAuliffe. It's McAuliffe's. But no, that money, Clinton money. Obviously, you cannot be deputy director of the FBI. You have a bias against Trump, therefore we must get rid of you. That's the thinking. So, and look, he disclosed his wife's candidacy and sought advice from senior FBI officials, but nonetheless, they say, no, you're biased, you should recuse yourself, and that's it. And so, failing that, they got rid of him. They pressured him to resign over this, and so the path is open for Rosenstein to get eliminated. Again, they want to get rid of him, and then you appoint new people to the FBI, and suddenly Mueller's position is in a lot of danger. Look, again, my speculation, but if this happens, this is the first domino to fall. Later on, I hope I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that I'm going to come back later in a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of months down the road and say, I told you so, after Trump fires Mueller. We'll see if that happens. We'll see if I'm right about that, or if not. But anyway, so there's the news on Andrew McCabe. Okay, so let's get into some other news. Non-Trump, non-Russia, well, I wouldn't say non-Trump news, but this is something that is, I think you'll find it interesting. All right. So President Donald Trump is delivering the State of the Union address tomorrow night, right? That's okay, fairly standard, right? We all know how it's going to go. I don't really know if it's worth watching. To be honest, it's going to be heavily scripted. You think they're going to allow Trump to talk on his own? No, of course not. They're going to have a nice scripted speech about, how everything is going fantastic and everything is tremendous. And look at the massive tax cuts we gave. It's all going to be wonderful, right? Again, fairly standard, right? Now, another thing that's fairly standard is the rebuttal speech. Now, whatever party is not in power is able to give a televised rebuttal speech, and we've seen this before. I think the last time it was during the President Obama administration. It was Kathy McMorris Rogers, or you had Joni Ernst. Nobody really remembers these things unless you're, Marco Rubio with like the water. That's the only thing that you remember from the State of the Union rebuttal speech because they're fairly low-key, right? Now, of course, this is the Trump era now. And so the Democrats now have a chance to, quote-unquote, resist Trump by responding with, you would think, a progressive, hopeful vision, right? I mean, again, the midterms are coming. You would think the Democrats would want to be strong and offer a counter vision to what we've seen from the Trump administration. Now, is that the direction they're going to go? Look, I don't know for sure. I don't want to say 100% sure, but it's kind of looking that way. I think we have learned what we have learned from from who is giving the Democratic response is that they're not going to go in that direction. According to NPR, Massachusetts Representative Joe Kennedy III, seen as a rising political star with a famous last name, will deliver the Democratic response to President Trump's State of the Union on Tuesday. Already, I've seen it on Twitter. Establishment Democrats are essentially creaming their pants over a Kennedy. Here we go. Now, top Democratic leaders in Congress made the announcement Thursday evening, calling Kennedy a, quote, relentless fighter for working Americans. I'll get back to that. Nancy Pelosi, U.S. House Minority Leader, said, Congressman Kennedy profoundly understands the challenges facing hardworking men and women across the country. His leadership has been vital in educating next-generation workforce, in creating good-paying manufacturing jobs, and expanding opportunities for the middle class. Well, let's talk about that. So what have we seen from Joe Kennedy? Not a lot. I mean, look, if he has been, great, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. Now, let me tell you why they're actually all excited about Joe Kennedy. They said that Kennedy is the grandson of the late Robert Kennedy, former U.S. Attorney General and New York Senator who was assassinated in 1968. He's also the great-nephew of late Massachusetts Senator Edward Kennedy and the late President John F. Kennedy. So what does this say, right? Name recognition. You see it like, oh, it's got the famous name. Even the NPR article was framing this. He's got such a famous last name. It's a political dynasty. And we all know the Democrats love political dynasties. This is a conversation that they're having on centrist Twitter right now is, oh my God, look at Joe Kennedy. He should run for president. Look, I don't know Joe Kennedy. I don't know much about him. I don't know much about what he's done because I haven't really seen him do anything. So, look, I looked around, right? I looked into him a bit, and what I found is that you cannot find someone with a lower profile. He's actually been a congressman since 2013. And unless you watched the DNC convention, which I know some of you probably, along with myself, hate-watched it because of how much they screwed Bernie Sanders out of the nomination, you likely never heard of him. In fact, look, again, the only reason that they picked him, I think, is because of his name. But look, nobody other than centrist Democrats, older people, baby boomers, and some Gen Xers or members of the political and media establishment actually care about Joe Kennedy and his last name, the Kennedy dynasty. It's the same kind of people who cared about the Clinton dynasty. And look, most Americans don't want any more political dynasties. And so that's what we have, right? Now, the Democrats, unfortunately, don't seem to understand. See, again, reading this article, and some of the numerous articles that talked about Joe Kennedy III, is they think that, the problem was why we didn't win in 2016, the problem other than, or why we're not winning across the country, and that something that we need for 2020 is we obviously need to have younger leaders. It doesn't have anything to do about corruption or bad name recognition for Hillary Clinton. No. We need younger leaders. We need newer leaders. You know what that basically means? No Bernie Sanders. He's not a leader. He's too old. Here we go with the ageism, right? But here's the thing, right? Being young is not what's important. That's not going to attract millennials. You know what's actually right? Or something that millennials actually want? They want somebody who's on the right side of the issues. Now look, for example, Bernie Sanders. I mentioned him before. He's like super old. But I love him because he's on the right side of most issues. Look, for example, Medicare, LGBT rights, living wage, racial justice, right? And while I don't agree with 100% of everything that he stands for, or he says or does, I should say, he at least, you know he cares, and you know he's genuine, and you know he's actually going to fight for your best interest. That's why I'm in favor of Bernie Sanders. Now, Joe Kennedy, from what we've seen of him, doesn't fight. Or at least he hasn't fought on the right side of the issues. And let me give you a good example. Something that he actually has done is vote against marijuana rights. He's on the wrong side of the drug war. In 2015, Kennedy was one of just 10 House Democrats to vote against a measure to protect medical cannabis patients and providers who were following state laws from being prosecuted by the federal government. And he was also just one of 24 Democrats to vote the same day against a broader measure blocking the Jeff Sessions Justice Department from interfering with all state marijuana laws, including those allowing recreational use. So, on the issue of the drug war, right, which goes to criminal justice reform, which has a big impact on racial justice, right, and states' rights to allow medical marijuana, he has shown himself to be on the wrong side of history with those votes. But he's a Kennedy. He's a Kennedy. He must be so fantastic. No. Look, he's not out there talking about Medicare for all, which he has 60% approval. No. And he's also not on the side of most Americans when it comes to medical marijuana, which polls very, very well. So what is he? Joe Kennedy III is safe. He is a safe option. He is non-controversial, which ironically, I just kind of made him into a bit of a controversial figure. But he's non-controversial, milquetoast, and has got a famous last name. So, you know, what they're going to do is the Democrats are going to trot him out for this State of the Union rebuttal, and they're going to pretend to resist Trump. This is exactly what the Democrats want. Now, the number of average Americans that are excited to see this, I believe, are likely very small. Now, don't get me wrong. It'll probably be a fairly decent speech. Oh, we lead with our values. Trump is bad. It's this and that. We stand for the working people. But do you? No, you don't. None of you do. Look, the Democrats, most Democrats, and of course all the Republicans, are nothing more than corporate apologists who care more about protecting the political and economic establishment than actually helping regular working people. And I cannot stand them. So there's one more thing here. And again, this is from NPR, and it kind of shows you what the goal here is, right? They said, aside from his famous surname, Kennedy is not well known outside Massachusetts, but at least for a few minutes, his role as rebutter-in-chief will make him the face of a Democratic Party hoping to make big gains in midterm elections this year. They want to make him the face. Somebody that has hardly done anything, who's on the wrong side of very important issues, and again, somebody who nobody knows, but has a very famous last name. Let's make him the face of the Democratic Party in the midterms. Let's not look and make the most popular politician in America the face of our movement. No, let's not reference him at all. In fact, let's go against him. Let's go against these popular policies. The Democrats are out of touch, and that's how out of touch they are. Look, the Democratic leadership, the people who make these decisions, they have to go. Pelosi's got to go. Feinstein's got to go. You want new blood? Okay. Well, guess what? There's a host of real progressives out there that are ready to challenge you in the midterms. Expect them. Okay. Moving on. It's getting organized here. So there's a group of nearly a dozen Senate Democrats that are teaming up with President Trump and the Republicans to gut Wall Street regulations. Yes, that's right. According to Common Dreams, there are 11 Democratic senators, plus Angus King, who's an independent from Maine, are joining with the Republicans to push through GOP-crafted legislation called Senate Bill 2155. Now, what it would do is that it would basically deregulate the financial industry. So let me get into the specifics here of what's inside this bill and why they would be disastrous. Now, one provision, Section 107, would let sales agents steer customers to high-cost lenders in the manufacturing housing market. So instead of actually looking out for the customers, no, they can look out after themselves. Yes, we want to make more of a profit. No, we don't care if we steer you towards high-cost lenders with high interest rates. Now, in some cases, those very same lenders could be owned by that firm that makes the mobile home, which of course gives them a double profit. And of course, the rates may be worse than those from other independent loaner or lenders. And there's another thing, of course, since they do serve mainly lower income Americans, this is another way that they could perpetuate fraud upon people who are poor. So people who don't quite understand interest rates and things like that. So that's Section 107. That's one provision of this bill. There's another one. Section 104 will shut down the data collection that shows if a bank has a pattern of loan discrimination based on race and gender. Now, wait a minute. I thought the Republican Party was supposed to be for racial justice, right? I thought that's what we cared about. Well, it turns out at least these 11 Democrats said, you know what? No, we don't care. We actually care more about our profits for the banks than we do about racial justice. In fact, what this would do is that it would let banks that make less than 500 mortgages escape reporting under the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. Now, the effect would allow banks to return to the practice of redlining mortgages. Now, what is redlining? Well, basically, that was an old practice they used to refuse loans in certain neighborhoods. These certain neighborhoods, you want to guess who comprises most of these neighborhoods? Oh, right, African Americans. So minority neighborhoods, they would refuse loans to. It doesn't matter your credit history. It doesn't matter any of that. It just matters, oh, if you're black, we don't want to actually give you this loan. Wonderful. Now, not only that, but Section 401 of the same piece of legislation would deregulate 25 of the largest banks by removing other additional safeguards. And Section 203 would let certain banks speculate with as much as $500 million in taxpayer-backed deposits. But wait, we don't want to pay for your risky lending, or your risky gambling, I should say. We don't want to pay for your speculation. This is why we need a 21st century Glass-Steagall. But instead of going in that direction, 11 corporate Democrats decide, nah, we're going to go with the banks. Now, Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, look, so she's a mixed bag, but on financial issues, she's actually fantastic. So now on this one, she said, the bill increases the risk of another taxpayer bailout, and I will continue to challenge supporters of the bill from both parties to explain why they stand on the side of big banks instead of working families. So who are these Democrats who support it? They are Senator Tom Carper from Delaware, Chris Coons, Delaware. Now, that's important because Delaware actually has the least amount of regulations for corporations. So not a surprise there. And then, of course, you have Joe Donnelly, Heidi Heitkamp, North Dakota, of course, John Tester of Montana, Mark Warner of Virginia, Claire McCaskill of Missouri, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Tim Kaine of Virginia, Gary Peters of Michigan, and Michael Bennet of Colorado. So these are the 11 Democrats who think that being on the side of Wall Street is fantastic. That is awesome. And actually, we're going to deregulate the banks more. Not, look. In 2008, these same banks doing these same kind of practices, at least when it comes to financial speculation and all this kind of stuff, crashed the economy. And yet here are the Democrats saying, yeah, look, Dodd-Frank's great, was a good idea, but I think we should just deregulate the banks even more. We think it was a little too tough. But Dodd-Frank is completely watered down. You know what Iceland did? They nationalized the banks and jailed the bankers. You know what's going on with them now? They actually have a booming economy, and they're doing excellent. And they have things like, again, universal health care. I wonder if we should have went in that direction. And look, yes, they nationalized the banks, and then they actually gave it back to private companies, but they jailed the bankers that caused their own recession. And what did we do? We passed weak sauce legislation. We looked forwards instead of backwards. And now, of course, these politicians that are owned by the bankers, that are owned by the corporations, they continue to chip away at Dodd-Frank. And this is another example of doing so. Hey, resistance. I thought you guys were supposed to be resisting the Republicans. I thought you were supposed to be resisting Trump. Trump loves deregulation. He'll sign any piece of deregulation, legislation that you put in front of him. He doesn't care. He's just like, oh, regulation bad. Yeah, I will sign to deregulate Dodd-Frank. I thought you were supposed to be resisting Trump. No. This resistance, it's not about resisting Trump. It's about actually resisting progressives. They work for their donors. The only thing that they care about is resisting progressives and resisting progress. Over and over, we see these same Democrats vote in favor of massive deregulation alongside of Republicans, working with Republicans to deregulate. Is it any wonder why the American people see these two parties as essentially the same thing? They work for the same donors, and the Democrats are paid to lose. Look, they don't work for you. They work for donors. The Republicans, yes, they have no shame. They're 100% in the pocket of corporations and the rich. We knew that already. But the Democrats are the ones, with the exception of a few principled progressives, they're the ones that'll sell you down the river for their corporate masters, all while doing it with a smile. In some ways, they're even more insidious than the Republicans, because at least they try to hide it. Well, in this case, you cannot hide, because we will find out what you're doing. We'll find out who's paying you to do what, and we'll call you out on it. Okay. So, let's take a quick break, if I could. Don't worry, we got more stories. We're going to talk about coal miners, the human cost of coal mining, because we talk a lot about the environmental cost. So I do want to go to the human cost as well as regulations. We got the Koch brothers and much more. So stay right here. Round the Nation. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the show. Around the nation, right here, TWT Nation. If you could, please give us a like and a share. Sharing is caring, of course. So I appreciate it if you get the word out about the show. All right. So, moving on. Okay, there we go. All right, where did you go? So, of course, one of the campaign promises President Donald Trump had made during his campaign was to bring back coal. And I think that's a terrible idea. He talks about, look, this is a guy that talks about clean coal, right? Oh, it's so clean, right? The guy thinks that literally you take the coal out of the ground and you like, clean it with stuff. That's not how it works. It doesn't actually exist. But nonetheless, he has followed through in his promises to try to bring back the coal industry. And how has he done that? Well, by deregulating the industry. Now, of course, other than the obvious environmental issues that you have with coal and the fact that it's the dirtiest fuel on Earth, no matter how much you try to brush it and clean it, right, you can't clean the coal. But look, other than those concerns, there's also another concern that is linked to this deregulation. And that is, of course, the human cost. Now, in all, it's been reported that since Donald Trump took office in 2017, a total of 15 miners have been killed thanks to, in part, lax regulation. Now, that is up from 8 in all of 2016. So they've nearly doubled the amount of coal deaths. Congratulations, Donald Trump. Victory, right? Mission accomplished. Now, the death toll in 2017 is actually the highest since 2014, when there were roughly 60,000 more coal miners at work than there are today. So the coal industry, of course, has been contracting quite a bit thanks to the natural gas boom. Now, the Trump administration is, and look, you hear Donald Trump all over the news, and of course, also people who support Trump. Oh, look at that. More coal jobs. They added a total of 771 jobs into the industry. And yet, double people died with about 59,000 less workers. How's that even possible? Less workers on the job, more deaths. Why? Deregulation, of course. Now, President Trump's support for the owners of mines has actually led to more lax safety enforcement. Now, you have, I'm going to read you a quote here from Joe Main. Now, Joe Main ran the Mine Safety and Health Administration under President Obama. So that's the agency that's, of course, is supposed to look after the miners and make sure that they're not getting killed. Okay. Now, you said that, quote, when you look at the Trump administration's policies and his ratcheting back of regulations, this administration has no moral compass about ethics. Companies also now think that they have a less aggressive sheriff in town. Well, and they would be right. Republican administrations are often far less strict on safety regulations than Democrats are, and that's saying something, because Democrats aren't exactly great on that either. So, and look, this is a problem that has existed far longer than President Trump. We've actually had lax safety enforcements at a lot of different, not only coal mines, but we also have factories and things like that. Why? It's because in a lot of cases, Republicans, or in most cases, I should say, Republicans hate regulation. They love deregulation. And in other cases, Democrats also join in and add to that deregulation. So they both work for industry. Now, as far as the Mine Safety and Health Administration under President Trump, well, they haven't been regulating, and of course, they haven't been enforcing either. Now, here's the thing, right? People think about regulations as terrible things. If you're a Republican, or if you hear about all these onerous regulations, goddamn regulations, right? But all they are is just rules meant to protect you from, in this case, accidents. Or, and also, there are ways to make sure that people are properly trained. And I want to give you some examples here of how many people have died from lack of adequate training in the coal mines. And actually, that lack of training and enforcement rules actually contributed to a majority of these deaths. Now, before I get into those examples, I want to give you a quote here from Phil Smith. Now, Phil Smith is the spokesman for the United Mine Workers of America. He said there's been a whole new generation of people hired into the coal industry. Younger workers who haven't had the benefit of enough training. Oh, look, coal mining is a hard enough job. If it were up to me, if I were President Jeff today, I would say invest massively in solar, take all the people that are working in the coal mines, put them in solar jobs, and then close down the mines forever. That's it. And coal mine, it's not like we need it anymore anyway, right? We could generate 100% of our electricity from renewable energy sources immediately if we actually just had the political will and investment. But that saying, the people that are working in the coal mine, they don't deserve to be killed just because of what they do. And so, but that, unfortunately, that seems to be what's happening today. Back to Smith here. He says companies are resistant to taking time taking time to take them off production in order to train them. So this is something that they could actively go and enforce. Hey, look, if you're not training your workers properly and there's workplace accidents, well, we're going to come after you. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to actually make sure that your workers are, again, adequately trained and safe. Unfortunately, that has not been happening, and it's had deadly consequences. Let me give you some examples here. Back in May, Lucha's Big Blue Rosser, 44-year-old man, was traveling on an electric locomotive deep in a West Virginia mine when his head hit a steel beam, instantly killing him. The official investigation into his death found that Rosser, a husband and father of 3, hadn't been properly trained in the machine. So, he knew how it worked, but was never briefed on safety procedures. So, their training basically consisted of, here's how you push the button to go. Now go. Not, hey, maybe you should watch out for, steel beams. Look, yes, they actually do have to tell you that because, again, I've never worked in a mine, so most people who haven't worked in a mine think, oh, well, it's easy, you just duck your head. But, again, we don't know the conditions inside the mine or what kind of proper safety procedures that people actually have to do to make sure that they don't have these kind of unfortunate accidents. There's another one here. In July, Andrew Oxenrider, a 28-year-old with 7 years in the job, exited his Caterpillar D9L bulldozer on the slope of a refuse bank. Oxenrider had not been trained in proper parking procedures for that model, and the bulldozer rode backwards, killing him before falling to the bottom of the embankment. Again, that's something that you would think some people might think is common sense, but if you're not trained to how to properly brake the vehicle and to make sure it doesn't roll backwards, well then, again, this is what happens. Now, another worker disabled his drilling machine's emergency shut-off system so he could make minor alignment adjustments, only to get pinned between the cutter head and the coal seam, suffering, quote, fatal crushing injuries, according to state investigators. Again, this is something that, hey, maybe if they actually took the time out there to tell them not to do that, and that, hey, this is what happened, or what would happen if you actually do something like this, if you actually make adjustments without actually shutting the thing off or whatever, this is how to properly operate it, then this stuff wouldn't happen if they train you. And again, coal mining is dangerous, right? If you're not trained, you can die in horrific ways. And that last one, being crushed fatally, oof, not a good way to go. And so look, what happened after this all this stuff happened, right? Some of these companies were given citations. Now, one example is Rockwell Mining, who was given a total of 7 citations, 2 of which carry a $10,000 fine. Now, what was the Trump administration response to these accidents? Oh, we just need more education. We don't need more enforcement. We don't need to enforce these fines. No, we just need to tell these companies, don't do that again. And that's it. Now, the Trump administration and the, the Mine Safety and Health Administration under Trump has put safety and enforcement as a very, very low priority. Now, how did they do that? Oh, well, I'm going to tell you how they're actually trying to enforce safety at the mines, and I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to explain why that's not enough. Now, for the first 7 months of the Trump administration, the top position at the MSHA actually remained vacant, so they didn't have anybody to actually do any safety and enforcement. Now, in August, congressional aide and White House advisor Wayne Palmer was put into that position. However, he had no experience in mining or in mine safety. And later on, Trump appointed a man named David Zatazalo. Now, Zatazalo is a retired coal mining executive to run this administration, and he has some questionable commitment to miners' welfare. For example, his Rhino Eastern mine back in West Virginia was hit with multiple violations in 2010 and 2011. And they've been hit with more than $2.1 million in fines for a total of 162 workplace safety or health violations since 2000. And Trump says, hey, let's put that guy in charge. So now this guy is running the agency responsible for safety, and how's he doing? Well, so far, not so good. So here's how the MSHA has been regulating and enforcing mine safety under Zatazalo. According to Newsweek, the MSHA is now pushing a more lenient safety check system called compliance assistance. Now, that was a program that was actually put into place under George W. Bush. Now, Newsweek explains if a compliance assistant visits a mine and notices a safety and health violation, he or she does not have the authority to issue a citation or a fine the way an official inspector would. Which, by the way, yes, there are still official inspectors, but as I'm going to explain later, that's also going to be curtailed. Now, they said if such assistants see something on a mine that may be wrong or bad or violation, all they can do is ask the company politely to fix it. No citations, nothing. Just, oh, yeah, hey, we see that could be unsafe. And the company's like, yeah, okay, noted. And then that's it. There's no compliance enforcement. No, it's voluntary compliance. This is corporations regulating themselves. There's no enforcement. All these assistants do is just walk around. They point out potential problems and they leave. They're basically tourists in these mines. That's their plan for mine safety. Have more of those. What's worse is that they're cutting back in the budget. Congress has proposed to cut the MSHA's coal enforcement budget by $11 million or 7% in the next fiscal year, leaving the agency with its lowest budget since fiscal year of 2013. And Trump had originally proposed to leave the budget largely untouched, but reduced staffing by 42 positions. So, yeah, they came to a compromise on that and said, let's just eliminate these jobs in enforcement and safety. Furthermore, Trump announced last month that MSHA was reconsidering rules intended to protect miners from breathing in dust that causes black lung. And in his few days as president, Donald Trump has eliminated Obama-era rules blocking coal companies from dumping waste into streams. That is how the Trump administration is helping coal. Look, that's how he's supposedly helping coal miners. And not only that, but he's actually, Rick Perry in this administration also has attempted to prop up the dying coal industry. And that's what this is, right? This is a dying industry, not because of these regulations, right? No, it's because of cheaper natural gas and cheaper, clean, renewable energy, which is what we should be going to. All this administration is doing is taking a dying industry and making it far more deadly for the workers. No amount of deregulation is going to save coal. However, as we've seen, those regulations, those rules that everybody hates, could actually save your life. And that is the effect of course, Republican deregulation in a nutshell. Okay. Moving on here. Now, the billionaire Koch brothers are now looking to influence the midterm elections in a really big way. According to Bloomberg, the Conservative Political Action Network, led by billionaires Charles and David Koch, plan to spend close to $400 million on policy and politics during the midterm election cycle. Now, that's about a 60% increase over 2015 and 2016. So they're pretty much doubling their expenditures. Now, that would include as much as $20 million in 2018 to sell voters on the Republican tax cuts. That's funny because there's nothing like rich people spending money on propaganda to lie to you about the tax cuts that they got. Oh, no, it's going to trickle down. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. Well, you need to pay people to do that? Why don't you just pay your workers more? That would make sense. But no, we can't do that. We're going to spend $20 million instead of it going to your paychecks, right? And people actually getting paid more. No, we're going to pay people to lie to you about the gigantic tax cuts that we have just received that aren't actually going to help you. No, we promise. This time it'll trickle down. Again, bullshit. Complete bullshit. Now, the plans were outlined to reporters at a 3-day summit for some 550 donors and potential donors at a resort near Palm Springs, California. Tim Phillips, president of the Koch-affiliated advocacy group Americans for Prosperity, said the spending would be the largest investment we've ever had in a midterm election. And that's because, again, they're spending about more than double what they spent back in 2015 and 2016. They should spend about $250 million. Now, $400 million, that's serious money, right? And most of which, of course, would be used to buy our politicians. Our politicians, they spend about 46 hours a day on the phone calling donors. So Republican politicians especially are looking at this and going, yes, here comes my payday. No, what this is that they passed the tax cuts for the rich. Now they're getting rewarded. It's just like Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan also got rewarded by the Koch brothers for passing these gigantic tax cuts. Mission accomplished. Good job, Paul. Good job. You just saved us billions of dollars. Here's your reward. Here's your treat. It's disgusting, right? So look, why would they be giving so much? Other than, of course, their just reward, right? Well, they're actually also worried about Democrats, right? No, look, here's the thing. Republicans are actually incredibly unpopular. Surprise, surprise, right? Because they haven't really done anything to benefit regular people. And they're really worried about that. So they're going to have to go on at these midterms and defend their record. Now, what is their record? Well, other than dysfunction, well, again, they give giant tax cuts to corporations and millionaires. This is a bill that was deeply unpopular with the majority of the American people. Only 24%, according to an NBC Wall Street Journal poll taken in December, thought the tax cuts were a good idea. 24%. Some 60% say that they will only benefit the wealthy. They will not see any benefit from this. They also, again, moving forward, I could say more about the tax cut bill, but I've already said so much in other videos. But as far as the record, they failed to repeal the ACA, right? And failed to get their own healthcare bill passed, which their healthcare bill was incredibly unpopular. All of their legislation that has been proposed has been horrendously unpopular with the American people. And now they're worried. They're worried about this. So here come the Koch brothers to go and say, don't worry, we're going to pay and put out more propaganda to prevent Democrats from taking over. Now, that's the Republicans. Now here comes the Democrats. More specifically, here comes the part where I actually go after the Democrats. The only reason that this has a chance of working is because of how ridiculously bad the Democrats are at doing both politics and policy. Again, we had Chuck Schumer that folded on the Dreamers. Something so easy as something that has majority support, 60 to 70% In some polls, even 80% of Americans want to believe that the Dreamers should be protected. What did Chuck Schumer do? He folded like a cheap suit. These Democrats have failed to embrace popular policies. For example, Medicare for all, right? Over 60% of the American public want Medicare for all. Every Democrat in the Senate, or nearly every Democrat in the Senate, should be in favor of this bill, should have co-sponsored this bill. Now, there are some smart ones who are like, ooh, 2020, I'm looking at the next election. It looks like we're going to need to go in a more progressive direction as far as at least rhetoric goes. So you have, people like Kamala Harris that are signing on, and other prominent Democrats signing on to Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all bill, co-sponsoring, right? The rest of the Democrats are like, nope, can't do that. Far too progressive. Pie in the sky, can't do it. All these different reasons to go and, of course, not back this incredibly popular policy when really it comes down to how much money they've received from the pharmaceutical industry and health insurance companies. But anyway, the point is that these Republicans, they resist Trump in public, and yet they also vote with Trump for many of his policies when people aren't paying attention. For example, Democrats helped give Trump warrantless wiretapping powers, increased spying powers. They have given somebody that they have called incompetent. And they've even gone so far as to try and say, oh, he's mentally unfit. That, of course, look, there are conspiracies out there that the doctor was lying. I should believe in the doctor when he says, yeah, Trump is, he's mentally stable. He's fit. Well, that doesn't say anything about his intelligence. Okay. And of course, a good example is that is like, oh, I scored 30 out of 30. He brags about scoring high on a test that only people that have dementia can fail. So take that for what it is. But look, not only that, but in the recent budget, where Chuck Schumer abandoned the Dreamers and the rest of the Democrats abandoned the Dreamers, also had an increase of the defense budget by $60 to $70 billion. So that's what they're talking about for their continuing budget. They want to increase the military. It's not Trump. Trump, again, yes, Trump and the Republicans want to increase the military budget. Here's the Democrats right off the bat saying, we're going to give you $60 to $70 billion for the military. Why? This isn't an accident. Okay? It isn't an accident. Democrats are bought by billionaires, just like the Koch brothers. And look, on the Democratic side, the supposed liberal side, they have their own billionaires. Let me give you an example. Stephen Klubeck, right? Klubeck hates Bernie Sanders. He hates progressive ideas. And he threatened, we're going to take away the money. I'm going to take away the money to Democrats if you start being too progressive. You start going too far left, I'm going to take away my funding. So what are they doing? They're going to play it safe. Resistance without actually resisting. McResistance. Look, the Democrats sicken me with their corruption. No other party would let monstrous people like Republicans get into power in the first place. They're weak. And of course, the Koch brothers know this, right? They know the Democrats are essentially controlled opposition. They're bought. That's why he can sit back and sip cocktails with his buddies. In fact, he says, quote, I'm more excited about what we're doing and about the opportunities that I've ever been. We have made more progress in the last 5 years than I have had in the previous 50. And he would not have had those gains if the Democrats were actually progressive and had pushed for real change. But look, he thinks it's going to be a cakewalk in 2018. Well, let's see what happens when the wave of real progressives, many of which are fighting against establishment Democrats right now, get a chance to run against his candidates. If he thinks it's going to be easy, he's got another thing coming. So let's get out there. In the midterms, and in the primaries before the midterms, especially, and go out there and vote for real progressives, so that when the midterms do come around, we can crush them in the midterms. They want a blue wave, we'll give them a real blue wave. Okay. Excuse me. One more story. Nope, that's the wrong one. Not cool. Just pulled a Marco Rubio here. I know. Okay. Serious topic. Very scary, actually. So one of the stories that was drowned out during the shutdown deal is something that I think is going to have dramatic consequences going forward. Now, Alex Emmons and Ryan Grimm here, doing excellent reporting for The Intercept, just wrote about how Congress had rushed through a spending bill that contains some very problematic language. They said, quote, this would kneecap Congress's ability to oversee secret covert actions and surveillance programs. What does that mean? Basically, this language that ends up being in most CRs, continuing resolutions to fund the government, has to do with the ability for Congress to shift money to intelligence agencies and intelligence agencies to be able to spend money on those programs. Now, one specific provision, first reported by The Intercept, appeared in the House version of the spending bill last week and had modified a 70-year-old law that first chartered the CIA. What it did is that it removed language requiring intelligence agencies to spend money according to Congress's instructions, and they replaced it with a provision that allows the agencies to move money around freely and without Congress's knowledge. So, meaning that if you get this money from Congress, right? So the CIA gets this money, and Congress is like, hey, man, I'd like you to spend it on, whatever program, fighting Islamic terrorism, right? Let's go spy on the Muslims, right? In other countries that actually might be looking to harm us. The CIA, under the old rules, would have to go and do that, right? They would have to come up with and spend the money on a program. But under the CR that passed last week, Congress could go, hey, we want you to spend money on this. And the CIA's response could be this. No. You know what we're going to do? We're going to shift money into one of our black projects. What that is, we don't have to tell you. In fact, we can go and shift money anywhere, and we don't have to tell you where it's going. But it gets worse. Blackwater Eric Prince had also recently pitched to the administration on a private intelligence force that could report directly to President Donald Trump and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. So, look, understand the implication here, right? Now, specifically, Pompeo runs the CIA. And what this bill allows the CIA to do is to use their money in whatever way they want without telling Congress. That means oversight is over, right? We don't know what they're doing now. And add in, if Donald Trump is actually takes the advice of Eric Prince, then he could create his own private army, answerable only to him and Mike Pompeo. That is scary as hell. That is how fascism begins. And they could do this, again, with no oversight. I don't know if I want to take the money and I want to give it to Eric Prince and have Blackwater go out and do our intelligence work, then I could do that. And it's answerable only to me, answerable only to whoever I put in the CIA position. And Pompeo is an ally of Donald Trump. So you think they're not going to use that against their political enemies? No, they've already started targeting political enemies, purging them from positions of power. Again, this is how fascism begins. And to make it worse, right? To make it far worse is actually who voted in favor of this. The Democrats allowed this to go through. Again, this is the bill that Chuck Schumer and most Democrats signed on to. Again, This was the bill to end the shutdown. And so, look, 81 congressmen in total voted for this bill with this language in it, despite people raising this issue and saying, hey, wait a minute, don't you see the implications of this, of what you're actually allowing in this change of language? The kind of power that you are handing the current administration, which this is power that no administration should ever have, not just the Trump administration, any administration. And of course, that's what bothered me about President Obama opening this door, because once you open this door, you're allowing anybody to go through it. Now, as far as Schumer, I thought you guys were the resistance. What are you resisting? Again, Chuck Schumer, the rest of the Democrats, or most of the Democrats, I should say, who voted for this continuing resolution that voted to end the shutdown, they enabled this. They wanted it to go through. And again, in addition to allowing Trump to create a private army, they also abandoned the Dreamers, right? And so you had 16 Democrats, thankfully, plus Bernie Sanders, who voted against this. Now, that was the right vote. And you even had Republicans here who were like, wait a minute, this language, this is too far. This is too far. In fact, you had the Republican chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr. Now, look, Richard Burr is nobody's liberal. I don't agree with him on anything. In fact, he has long been one of the Senate's staunchest advocates for the intelligence agencies. In fact, this is the guy who tried to bury the results of the Senate's 5-year investigation into the CIA's torture program. So when it comes to torture, he's like, yay, torture. I'm all cool with that. I'm fine with torture. In fact, I'm going to bury this report. But even this guy, he's like, whoa, you're going to do what? You're going to give the CIA the power to what? He said, quote, this language could erode the powers of the authorizing committee. So he's saying, like, you're going to take away my oversight. You're going to take away our oversight of the CIA. You're going to let them go. Unacceptable. Now, he also said, effectively, the intelligence agency could expend its fund as it sees fit without an authorization bill in place and with no statutory direction indicating that an authorization bill for 2018 is forthcoming. Now, you also have Mark Warner, who's a Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He said if this exemption is granted, which it was, he could potentially have any administration, go off and take covert activities. For example, with no ability for our committee, which spends the time and has the oversight, to say time out or to say we actually disagree with that policy. Because you wouldn't even know what the policy is. Because they don't have to tell you. Again, all this money is going to go into, or could go into black projects that we have no idea. And Congress doesn't have any idea that they're putting money into. Again, this is incredibly scary. Now, as far as the Republicans go, well, I thought you guys hated the deep state. Look, I watch Hannity, right, rail against the deep state all the time. And yet, you voted to give Trump the ability to create his own private army from the deep state. That doesn't make any sense. I thought you hate the deep state. And here you're giving deep state's power to President Trump. That's crazy. That's crazy. What happened, Republicans? What happened? I know what happened. Their hypocrisy is legendary. They love power. They actually love the deep state. They love torture. And they love the idea of private, unaccountable agencies. That's what they love. And surprisingly, Richard Burr, again, I have nothing in common with him, right? He's actually one of the few conservatives that pointed out the danger of letting the intelligence agencies run wild. And trust me, without oversight, they will. Imagine the outrage if any other president had this power. If a Democrat had this power and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this power and I'm going to use it and I'm going to create my own private agency, private intelligence agency outside of the bounds of Congress. What do you think the reaction from the Republicans would be? But it's different. The Democrats, again, sign on to this for the most part. And again, it goes back to Obama, who kept using intelligence agencies and giving them more and more power when he was president. He reauthorized warrantless wiretapping, extrajudicial killings by intelligence agencies, and even authorized more collection of our data. And yet, again, he also opened the door on giving these agencies more power, and Trump and Pompeo are happily going to walk through it. It's incredibly scary. So, thank you to Republicans and, of course, so-called resistance members in the Democratic Party. You have done something that could be very, very disastrous in the future. This is not good. And I think everybody would be right to be a little bit scared going forward. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. If you haven't already, please give us a like if you enjoyed the show. And if you want to support independent progressive media, go to patreon.com/TYTNation, and you can help us out there. All right, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. See you tomorrow.